We have reached the terminal phase of the greatest debt spiral in the history of the human race, Michael Snyder reports. If you're going to go out, you might as well do it with a bang. At the beginning of June, our national debt was sitting at $31.5 trillion. Today, it's risen to $33.4 trillion. That means that we have added almost $2 trillion in the national debt in just 3 months. It's the largest single debt in the entire history of our planet, and it will never be paid off. Our debt spiral has reached a terminal phase, and all we can do now is prolong the agony. If we keep taking on more debt at an exponential rate, we may be able to extend our seemingly endless party for a little while longer. As for the bright future that our children and grandchildren were supposed to have, we destroyed that a long time ago, and so it does not really matter what we do now. What our politicians are doing to us is truly a crime against humanity. And I'm not just talking about the United States. All over the world, politicians have been on the greatest debt binge in the history of the human race, and for quite a few years it seems like they were getting away with it. But now interest rates are rising and there is a great turmoil in the bond markets. The following comes from CNN. A slump in government bonds around the world has pushed up the cost of some nations' debt to levels not seen in more than a decade. That's bad news for governments in the red, but also for the wallets of millions of mortgage borrowers, stock investors, and businesses. The sell-off has been fueled by expectations among investors that the world's major central banks will keep interest rates higher for longer to bring inflation down to their targets. It works like this. Governments looking to raise cash for public services and investment issue bonds. A bond provides a way to borrow money from investors for a set length of time with the obligation to make regular interest payments. In recent weeks, bond yields have reached very alarming levels. If this continues, government all over the world will soon be facing enormous problems. When official interest rates rise, so do investors' expectations for returns on bonds, known as yields. This creates an incentive for investors to sell the bonds they currently hold and buy newly issued ones that offer higher interest payments. Selling bonds reduces prices, so in short, when yields rise, bond prices fall. And yields have most definitely been rising. The yield on a 30-year U.S. government bond, also known as Treasuries, hit 5% on Tuesday for the first time since 2007. In the United Kingdom, the yield on a 30-year bond is also 5% this week, the highest level in more than 2 decades. Yields on German long-dated bonds are back to levels last seen on the eve of the Eurozone debt crisis in 2011. Yields on Italy's 10-year bonds hit 5% on Wednesday, the highest level since 2012, when that crisis was in full swing. There is no way out of this mess now. If we would have acted responsibly all along, we would have gotten a much different outcome. But at this point, our fate is pretty much sealed. Of course, our politicians never intended to change course. In fact, they continue to spend money like drunken sailors. And as Zero Hedge aptly noted, the U.S. government recently added $275 billion to the national debt in one single day. The U.S. added notes $275 billion in debt in one day. Total U.S. debt is now $33.442 trillion, hit $33 trillion just 2 weeks ago, and on pace to rise by $1 trillion in 1 month. What makes all of this even more frustrating is that they are not even spending the money efficiently, and in many instances it's being wasted on extremely frivolous things. Federal officials have been criticized after splashing $3.3 billion on swanky new office furniture during the pandemic when almost all staff worked from home. The egregious spending habits of the U.S. government included almost $250,000 on solar-powered picnic tables for the CDC and $120,000 on plush Ethan Allen leather chairs. We're borrowing and spending money at an exponential pace, and we all know how this is going to end. It's going to end with the US dollar becoming worth little more than toilet paper. This is a point that author Robert Kiyosaki made very eloquently during a recent interview. Robert Kiyosaki, renowned author of the phenomenal personal finance book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, shared a piece of his mind on how to decentralize from the fiat currency in these scary times of a broken banking system. According to him, the dollar has been losing its purchasing power, and not long from now, it will just be worth less than toilet paper. During his appearance on the recent episode Decentralized TV, hosted by Mike Adams and Todd Pintner, Kiyosaki pointed out how the lack of financial education in the United States blinds the people and even President Joe Biden's administration in tackling the current economic downturn. Just recently, they raised the debt ceiling again, and because our schools have no financial education, no idea of credit ratings, our debt is increased by $1.8 trillion. The United States, via Fitch rating service, downgraded U.S. debt from AAA to AA+. We are on a collision course for disaster. It's true. We really are on a collision course with disaster, but most Americans don't realize what's happening. Most Americans seem to believe that there will never be any serious consequences for all the borrowing and spending that we have been doing, and that's because most Americans don't understand basic economics. When your debt rises much faster than your income does for an extended period of time, it's always going to result in pain, every single time. If you have ever found yourself drowning in debt, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, now our entire country is drowning in debt, and our politicians are adding hundreds of billions more to that debt every single month. This is not going to end well, and that should be obvious to everyone. For the moment, our politicians are doing their best to keep the debt spiral humming, but the clock is ticking and time is quickly running out. This is by Michael Snyder, and he says about the author, "My name is Michael, and my brand new book entitled End Times is now available on Amazon. In addition to my new book, I've written 6 other books that are available on Amazon, including 7-Year Apocalypse, Lost Prophecies of the Future of America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters, commissions earned. When you purchase any of these books, you help to support the work that I'm doing, and one way that you can really help is by sending copies as gifts to family and friends. Time is short, and I need help getting these warnings into the hands of as many people as possible. I've also started a brand new Substack newsletter, and I encourage you to subscribe so that you won't miss any of my articles. I've published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and the most important news. And the articles that I publish on those sites are republished on dozens of other prominent websites all over the globe. I also freely and happily allow others to republish my articles on their own websites, but I also ask that they include this about the author section with each article. The material contained in this article is for general information purposes only, and readers should consult licensed professionals before making any legal, business, financial, or health decisions. I encourage you to follow me on social media, Facebook and Twitter, and any way that you can share these articles with others is definitely a great help. These are such troubled times, and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, I strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. This is by Michael Snyder on the Economic Collapse blog. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.